A day came, which the ancient Inuit people never expected. The sun came close to the full moon. Soon, the sun went behind the moon. It happened around noontime. The sun eclipsed behind the moon, and it was getting dark. But people could see, because it was not real dark. There was a kind of reddened color everywhere, and it got cold. It began to frost on the ground. The animals began to roam around. The birds began to fly everywhere. It seemed they forgot to be afraid of each other. The people had no clothes to wear, and they began to look for shelter. Some found caves. So were the animals looking for shelter. The birds were flying in every direction. The people could not hear much from each other because the birds and animals made so much noise. The sun and moon stayed together for 3 days and 3 nights. Each day, less and less noise could be heard. On the 3rd day, there were only a few little noises. On the 4th day, at noon, the sun came out from behind the moon, but it was still cold. There were only a few people who survived to see what happened when the sun came out to shine on the world once more. Every plant, all the grass, and the fruits and berries were frozen. Only a few large animals still walked around. When it looked like the climate would get even harder to live in, and that other disasters might come, the people began to think about how they might need better tools and weapons. They talked it over with each other and with the leaders. They thought about how to use rocks and stones, things like jade and slate, and hard rocks that would break off with sharp edges when they were hit the right way. They thought how to use driftwood and growing live wood, and bark and the soap and roots of the trees and plants. They thought about all the parts of the animals they could not eat and how they could be used. They experimented and soon made useful things: clothes, tools, bags, and pouches to store things, from skins, bones, teeth, sinew, guts, and even the blood of animals. One man thought about making a spear. He found a long piece of wood like a water willow. Then he found a pointed piece of rock. He fastened the rock to the end of the wood with a strip of animal skin. He tried it, and it worked. Some man took another kind of rock and put it on a short piece of wood to make a handle. He bound it together with rawhide and made a hammer. They made knives of all kinds out of sharp rocks. Sometimes they put wood or horn handles on them. They kept improving the first things they made until they had tools to do all the things they wanted to do. The women made clothes out of fur skin. No longer were the bodies of people uncovered and exposed to the sun and rain. The weather was changing little by little every coming year. One day, a man saw lots of fishes in the river. He was wondering if there was a way to catch more fish without fishing with a spear. This would be a better way. One day, he ran across a spider web and found that some flies had been caught. He began to see that if he could only make something like that web out of something, he would catch many fish with it. So he thought it over. All at once he took a piece of rawhide string and studied it, and the web of the spider. He tied a knot in the end of 2 strings and then another knot a little farther along between the 2 strings. He was making a mesh. He worked at tying the strings of rawhide together until he made a net like a spider web. He worked at it a long time. Then he set it in the river. The next morning, he looked in the net. Sure enough, he had caught 2 fish in it. The fish were hanging to the net. When he took the fish, the net twisted so bad, he thought about how to keep the net straight. He found 2 long roots of a tree. He pulled them through the top and bottom lines of the net. Then he tied one end of the net to the ground on the bank of the river. Only the bottom of the net was not tied down. He thought a rock might keep it down, so he put rock weights on the bottom of the net. Then he went home. Next morning, when he looked in the net, there were lots of fish in it. He brought the others and let them look. Since that happened, the Inuit have made the nets better and better. So the Inuit people built more and more things. One man looked into a mouse hole in the ground. The mouse had made a home in the high, dry ground. He had nice dry grass stored in the hole to sleep in and to keep him warm in the nights. That mouse had found roots and seeds to eat and had stored them in his home. The man told the others about the mouse building his dry home in the ground, keeping warm, and how he gathered and stored food away for the cold time. The people began to build their homes to keep warm in the nights while they slept and to keep dry from the rain. Their houses were half in the ground and the upper part was covered with earth. Those houses were really warm. Some other Inuit learned to build homes from the ants. One day, in wintertime, a man cut a hole in the ice on the river to fill a wooden bucket for water. He looked through the hole into the bottom of the river. He saw lots of fishes going up the river. He came back to the house and told the others what he saw. Then they talked about the fish and how they were going to catch them. Finally, one of the children went to look into the water. Sure enough, there were lots of fish. So he went and cut a young water willow. He sharpened one end and began to spear those fishes right through the hole in the ice. He came up to the house with 2 fish. He laid them on top of the house. The people came out to see them. Those fish were stiff, frozen. They had not seen this before in their lives. They let them lay there. Pretty soon, the boy was getting hungry. He took up one of those fish and tasted it. It sure tasted good, and he ate it all. He told the others. They first found out frozen fish are good to eat from that boy. Many people made spears for fishing through the ice. Lots of men, women, and children have speared fish through the ice since then.